Hi guys, I don't know if you can hear me, but I am testing this out. Let's see. I don't know if you can hear me. Let's see. I need to look at this. Okay, thank you. I am so glad. I'm sorry guys, I'm trying to pull up the chat. It's a little finicky at the moment. And then I will be happy to answer all of your questions. Just gotta keep music. Okay. Ooh, I got it. Okay, hi guys. So I just wanted to do a little introduction. So my name is Ashton. I'm the current host that is out. And I just wanted to, explain a little about what being a veteran with DID means and also, answer some questions that you guys have because I would love to hear your questions and I'll try and get to all of them as quickly as I can. But to start off, so I have been in the VA system for about 2 years now. And it's been a ride. And something that I didn't know was that, I could get diagnosed in the VA system. So I don't know if any of you listened to Dr. E's System Speak podcast with Dr. Barish. And that was actually the person who diagnosed me. And, which by the way is really cool. He was a really nice guy. He was very professional. When I got diagnosed, he specifically sat down with me. We did the skid from the DSM-4, which is the structural clinical interview for dissociation. And I don't know why he used the DSM-4 version. Guess it was just a personal preference. But that was a big moment for us because, for a lot of people, it takes years upon years upon years. And for us, it took less than a year. Also, hi, my multiple life. It's really nice that you've come to check in. Hello to everyone. But it was very interesting because when we sat down, he specifically said, don't talk about trauma if you don't want to. We're only going to be seeing each other once, and I don't need to know about it. And it was very, very interesting. And it was very, I guess, a huge relief on our end because we didn't have to share everything. We didn't have to, talk about everything that had happened to us because we didn't know very much at that time. And so it was such a huge relief. He essentially read the whole thing, just word for word, asked us to explain exactly what was going on, and just went through the whole process. And, we were diagnosed, and that was such a big moment for us because we had suspected it. We had, thought about it, talked about it with our partner. So it was a huge thing for us. And, it's really nice. He was really supportive. So just wanted to share that little tidbit of information on how we got diagnosed. We're here to answer most questions. If for some reason we ignore your question or we don't answer it, it's just because we aren't comfortable with it. But yeah, so it's very tricky, I guess, navigating the VA system purely from the standpoint of being a veteran and having DID isn't really the quote unquote social norm. Because, when you enter into the military, they expect that you are a quote unquote healthy person. So you're mentally healthy, you're physically healthy, you're encompassing all of these things that are, of someone with a normal health. Well, unknown to them, are not physically or mentally healthy. But we were still accepted into the military, which I think is interesting. It was an interesting process to go through. It was an interesting experience that we went through. And well, part of me is sad because I'm no longer in the service and that's no longer a part of my life. Part of me is also very grateful for that experience. It was a very eye-opening experience for us. It was a huge culture shock because the military is vastly different than the quote the civilian life that, a lot of people know and are accustomed to. We all have to wear uniforms. We all have to show up at a certain time. We all have to act a certain way, behave a certain way. There's all of these protocols that, we have to follow. Hi, Kaleidoscope. It's nice to see you. But there's all of this stuff that we have to follow. We had to recite the Sailor's Creed, sing Anchors Away, which I don't even remember anymore. We had to, fulfill these expectations. We had to be at work at a certain time. We had to be doing all of these certain things up to a certain standard. And it kind of granted us freedom, in a way, because we were getting paid, we did have a job. And it was sort of freeing. It was in a very strict environment, but it was a nice way to be able to, I guess, thrive in a way. It's not like you're being chucked out into the world right after college. You're still, living this life. So, for example, when I went to boot camp, transportation was provided for me. I got my first bank account, like my first actual bank account that I did myself while I was in the Navy. I started receiving like an actual paycheck while I was in the Navy. I started, receiving all of this sort of adult life. Kayla Barnes asked, how are you able to pass the examinations to qualify? It was a struggle. So specifically for boot camp, you have to go through all of these qualifications. So you have to pass a swim test, you have to pass a firearms test, you have to pass a physical test, which is 1.5 miles, and I think under 15 minutes. You have to do 50 push-ups and 50 sit-ups, I believe. But I think for women, it's 30 push-ups. Don't quote me on that because I don't exactly know. And they call it the physical fitness assessment. So in short terms, it's the PFA. Let me tell you, I failed. So the first time around, they do a bunch of practice rounds. So you go in and you practice and you train and you do all of this stuff. So it's very, very set up to this idea that you're going to pass. Well, what happens if you don't? So I didn't pass it. Well, I got sent to a specific group of people that either didn't pass the swim test or didn't pass the physical fitness test. And that was pretty mortifying. I was like, well, what am I going to do? I either have to pass it or I get kicked out of the Navy. The Navy doesn't want me if I'm not physically fit. But thankfully, when I went and redid the test, there was a chaplain that ran with us. So he was a religious person that ran with us. And they said, if you stick with this specific person, I don't remember his name, but if you stick with this specific person, you'll pass. And miraculously, I did. I was extremely out of breath and I could barely breathe, but miraculously I did. And that was probably one of the happiest moments of my life. This idea that I could do something, that I was able to do something that I never thought that I could. And it was very gratifying because I was able to then graduate boot camp. So good question, Kayla. And it was so exciting. I could barely breathe, but I was literally crying, which is kind of hard to do. I was so happy. The religious person that I ran with actually came up to me afterwards and congratulated me on passing. And I was over the moon. I was so ready to be able to graduate boot camp, go and do my job, and go travel the world. I was so excited. Which, yes, I did graduate. I graduated with the same people that I started with, actually. Yeah, so they do, as far as like mental tests, they don't necessarily do like a mental test. It's more in regards to when you go down and you actually apply for the Navy. A big thing that they don't want to see is any scars or anything that would notate that you are not mentally healthy. And this could get into some very triggering topics, but that's more what they're looking for. So specifically, they're looking for self-injurious behavior, any signs of that, any therapy documents that would disqualify you, any sort of mental health conditions that would disqualify you. And that's exactly what they're looking for in regards to other mental tests. So they do a test called battle stations, and you have to stay up for 24 hours. That's a big thing. And you have to go through all of these different tests for 24 hours, and you're not allowed to sleep. That's another mental test that they do. When you enter boot camp, they have you stay up for 24 hours or 48 hours to see how you can handle the lack of sleep, and you're not allowed to sleep. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by MID. If you could clarify that, that would be great. And yes, Christopher, you do take the ASVAB. So the ASVAB is a test that is for every branch. So Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard. You all have to sit down and take this test. And it's math, it's, reading comprehension. They give you some like weird number thing that you have to do. You have to qualify up to a certain percentage, like however many points you get. And you have to qualify for that specific branch. So for the Navy, you have from X point to X point is what you have to get in to be able to qualify. And that helps determine what type of job you'll be able to qualify for. So specifically for the Navy, you can choose your job, which is nice. But you have to have a job that you'll like to choose. So for example, I got the job hospital corpsman, which is basically, you're like a medical technician. That's the basic idea of it. So you work in the medical field. And it was a nice job. I mean, it's a very high stress job. I mean, as the military is, but it was a nice job. Multidimensional inventory for dissociation. I'm not exactly sure my multiple life. I have no experience with it. It's never been used. I know that they'll use there's a couple other like specific diagnostic tests that they'll do. My personal experience is only with the structural clinical interview for dissociation. I know there's one that Colin Ross does. I know that there's a somaformative questionnaire that's more looking towards physical symptoms. but that's not really used to diagnose per se, as far as I know, but don't quote me on that. So I'm not really sure. Um, so, but yes, so I was slated to go as a hospital corpsman, basically a medical job, which is really funny because I have like little to no knowledge of anything medical. Uh, and I wasn't quite sure what I was getting into either. Um, it was pretty stressful. I was excited. I was terrified. Uh, but I got really comfy sweatpants from this whole experience. I don't know if you like sweatpants, but that was nice. They were really comfy. They kept you nice and warm. Um, oh, news to me. I had no idea. Um, I just don't have any personal experience with it, so I'm not exactly sure. I've never seen it, I've never read it, but that's a very interesting theory. Thank you. I really appreciate that, my multiple life. So Christopher Needle, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, says, did you find yourself being a certain person in your head for doing certain things in the military? I think so. I think it was more, I felt I had something to prove to myself and to others, to prove that I could do something, that I could be something. Um, okay, cool. Thank you. Um, and, I think it was more of whoever was more headstrong was fronting. So, for example, myself, I would not have passed this physical portion of the test. I don't know who was out. We don't exactly know. Um, but they were very, very determined. Um, so, yes, I think it all depends. It all depended on who was out and what exactly the task was. Now, for EMT school, because we had to go through EMT school, nobody was any help there because the lack of focus was great. But yes, and we're still trying to point out exactly whose decision it was to join the military, first off, and second of all, who pushed us through and got us to where we were, because we'll forever be eternally grateful for that. Because passing boot camp and being successful is 10,000 times less painful than failing, because failing, it takes a while. They have to separate you, and that's a lot of paperwork and a lot of time. And by passing, you're able to see your family, you're able to, graduate and move on and finally have your phone back, finally have, a life. And that, I think, was the biggest thing that pushed whoever was out. And yes, haha, is right. It's a fun one. And my multiple life sweatpants are the best. They're really cool sweatpants. They said navy on the side, and they were built in with like reflectable material. So if you were walking late at night and someone was driving around on base, you could specifically see the person that was walking. It was the coolest thing, and I still have them. I don't wear them that much anymore because they're not as soft and comfy, but yes, I still do have them. And yes, I still do have all of my uniform stuff as well. It's not stored in the most neat place, but yes, I do. I still have my cap. I still have my clothes that I had to wear. I still have my smelly boots. I have everything. Um, and I also have the older version of the uniform. As I am trans, um, my legal gender identity is female. So when I joined the military, specifically, I was female. I didn't come out as trans at the time, so I have the old female uniforms. I have the old, like female dress uniforms, the like older uniforms, because right as I was about to leave, they were transitioning everyone into the uniforms being non-gender specific. So the stereotypical blue pants, blue like jacket, the tie that you see, the little sailor's cap, that's what everyone is wearing now. So specifically, I have an older hat, an older jacket, an older, just an older set of what they call dress blues. And they were fun to get on. You felt like you were being choked. But yeah, so that's what I have. Thanks, Kiki. Yeah, I've heard about Air Force Basic. I knew someone that went through it specifically. But yes, from what I've heard, getting discharged from boot camp is a pain. There are specifically people in Navy boot camp that, like you said, Christopher, that either have an injury or they have an unidentified illness that they don't know. I knew someone who found out that he had a hole in his heart when he went to boot camp, and obviously the Navy will not accept him. So he was diagnosed. He was getting whatever treatment they could obtain for him before he got separated. He was ineligible to be in the military because when you go down to, or when you go to wherever it is to get your like military screening, so you take your test, you get the medical examinations done. They're not always thorough, so they aren't going to be looking for all of these things. Or if someone just personally doesn't know, it can be a very long process in regards to getting you out because it's the military, which is part of the government, and they're not the quickest. I'm so sorry, Christopher, that your girlfriend spent 6 months there. I can imagine that was just horrendous. Question for you, Christopher. Did she end up getting her phone back, or was she still not allowed to have her phone? Because I'm curious. I've never spent any time in that specific area. So, and a big proponent of Navy boot camp is you don't get your phone. Oh, it was pre-cell phone? Oh, I'm so sorry. So we specifically got a phone card. You could continue to add money to it, which is nice because you're getting paid. So you will have money to pay for it. But it's dependent upon, it was Coast Guard boot camp? Oh, I know nothing about that. So, but thanks for the info. Where is Coast Guard boot camp, by the way? Just out of curiosity, I've never heard of it. I've never heard exactly where it is. So you get this little specific, like, kind of like a gift card that you use for like a landline, not a landline phone, a like payphone kind of, and you get a certain amount of time. So it gives you a certain amount of time to be able to call someone. And basically, before boot camp, they suggest that you either memorize people's phone numbers or write them down. Or you could do what I did, where I called family and was like, hey, do you have XYZ's phone number so I can call them? And if they don't answer, unfortunately, you don't get to talk to them. You can try once, you can try twice. If they don't pick up, then you either have to wait a week or wait until you're given phone privileges again. The thing with the Navy is that phone, you're like calling your family, is not a right, it's a privilege. You have to be able to earn it. You have, through good behavior, through making your commanders proud, through all this other work. So, it's in South New Jersey. Interesting. I never knew. So, and also for those that are wondering, Navy boot camp is in Chicago, Illinois. It's in North Chicago technically, but that's where it is. They used to be in, I think, Texas and also California, but apparently, supposedly, that wasn't government-owned land, so they were paying whoever it was that owned that specific property to house boot camp there. So in order to save money, they just brought us all to Illinois. What led me to getting a diagnosis? The Shali Ray Molzon. Let me know if I butcher your name, please, because I'm terrible with them. So I brought it up to my psychiatrist. No, I think I brought it up to my first therapist originally, stating that I had suspected that I had DID. And I didn't expect it to go anywhere. I didn't expect any diagnosis. I wasn't expecting anything like that because I didn't think that the Veteran Affairs system and the hospital had anyone to treat dissociative disorders. And so I mentioned it to her. She sort of basically said she didn't understand in a way and didn't really know what was going on. I don't exactly remember all of that conversation, but it was essentially not a very healthy conversation. I brought it up to my psychiatrist, and she also kind of held the same view of, we don't exactly believe this. Maybe when you get a diagnosis, then we'll start having this conversation. But until then, I don't know. And then, not much was explained to me. So I didn't know this Dr. Barish. I didn't know exactly what I was going there for. I didn't know that, like, exactly what I was going in for. So I was kind of worried. And then he sat me down and was like, yeah, we're going to go through a dissociative disorder test to see if you have DID. And I was shocked because it wasn't really explained to me. And I was like in awe that I was sitting here with someone who is going to look at all of my symptoms and diagnose me. And then the second part of the question was going through military, making everyone come forward more. Yes. So specifically, while we were in Japan, we were stationed in Japan for a little while. We had more of the masculine alters come out. So we bought masculine satchel thing. I don't exactly know what you call it. We got more masculine clothes. We got masculine pants. So yes, the influence of alters was very present and very prolific. And then specifically when we got hurt in the military, that made those boundaries even less. So it's kind of like cracking a glass. Like you're holding in all of this water and then all of a sudden something happens and the glass starts to crack and then it eventually breaks open. Thankfully, it broke open while we were, back in the States. And we were with our partner who loves and cares about us and was able to work through all of these issues with us. Yeah, I would say so. Power Civil Plurals. It was kind of, it was also very saddening as well. Like if you couldn't talk to your family or talk to your friends, talk to the people that have supported you. Yes, Christopher. Yay, military. Yeah, so it's a little tricky, especially if you were sick. It was really hard because you had to watch all of the people that were in your same group with you go and call people, and then you come back, but you couldn't go because you were sick. Also, yeah, Christopher, I can only imagine not being able to answer and not being able to talk to your partner. That would be exceedingly hard. And I'm glad that it was long ago. I'm glad that, it's over now. And I'm glad that there was no trauma as well. That's very, very good. Thank you, Dichelli. I don't exactly know how to pronounce it, but I thank you. if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to ask. I'll try and answer them as best as I can. I only speak for the Navy, though, so I don't exactly know the Army. I don't exactly know the Air Force. I know basically nothing about the Marines. So, oh, and also the Coast Guard. I know absolutely nothing about the Coast Guard. But so I guess a little bit about me. So I started my Navy life in Great Lakes, Illinois, which is in Chicago. It's like out in the suburbs of Chicago. And I started, I was 19 at the time, and I was just a youngin'. I just gotten out of high school, and I was overjoyed. And I was also terrified. I didn't know how I was going to do without my phone, because that's a scary thing, being 19 and not having a phone. But there were also things that you could do to combat that. So, like, for example, you could buy a little notepad and a pen. You could write letters home to your family. They would do mail every Sunday, which I think is funny because mail doesn't deliver on Sundays, but they would still do it on Sunday. So you could write all of your letters during the week, and like tell everyone exactly what was going on, exactly what was happening. My partner, we weren't dating at the time, but they would write me these long, amazing letters. And it made it so worth it to read those words and to hear what they had to say. And I still have them. I still keep them. They're one of my most important memories throughout boot camp, was receiving those. I received some from friends, and a lot of it was unexpected. I didn't know that I was going to be receiving it, so that was extremely exciting. They would read mail, and I would have mail, and I could read it, and I could see those words and stare at that handwriting and know that it was from someone who cared about me. That was just an amazing experience. So that was so much fun. Then I graduated. I went through everything. We also did firefighting. I forgot to mention that. Firefighting was so much fun. You got to basically hold a giant fire hose, burn it on, release the water, and turn it back off. It was one of the more fun parts of boot camp. Also, the swimming part was really fun, because they have a giant Olympic-sized swimming pool. So that was loads of fun. And then once we graduated boot camp, which graduation is like a huge thing. So for graduation, you graduate, you stand through the whole procedure, you do whatever you need to do. There's someone who walks through the rows to make sure that nobody falls over, because the standard principle is if you're standing for long periods of time, don't lock your knees. Otherwise, you're going to get really lightheaded and fall over. I don't exactly know the whole principle behind it, but it does ring true. And so you stand there, anxiously waiting to see your family because you haven't seen them for a long time. And, I was so excited. I finally got to see them. We got to leave base. We went to a local mall. We ate some food. We basically just had a whole bunch of fun. And then I hung out on base for a while. I was able to Skype my current partner, which was so nice. That was probably the most exciting part. I was able to Skype because they had a computer that you could use. And then basically I stayed the night. I packed up all of my things, and I was flown down to Texas. Yes, firefighting was so much fun. You got to don like this cool mask. You got to don all of the sweaty fireman gear. It was loads of fun. And like they had an actual fire. Oh, it was so cool. Kayla Barnes said that she has a friend in the Army. Yeah, basic is rough. Do you know if they get their phone in the Army, Kayla? You may not know, but I'm just curious. And then Christopher also asks, did you know you were a DID when you were in boot camp or enlisted? No, I had no idea. None whatsoever. I didn't know. All I knew is that I was dealing with depression. I was dealing with basically a couple other mental health conditions, but I had no idea. So that was basically it. Now I know, obviously, but at the time I had no idea. I was, wearing different clothes. So one day I'd wear a dress, one day I'd wear, a suit and tie, or not a suit and tie, but like a collared shirt, or whatever else. It was very like back and forth between feminine and masculine, and like somewhere in between. Oh, you had to write him. Ooh, I mean, at least you were able to gain some form of communication, Kayla. So I guess that helps. But yeah, so I went from Illinois to Texas, which was a drastic difference. I've never lived in Texas, so I didn't know. And it was specifically San Antonio, Texas. There is a huge army base there, which, by the way, I'm very glad that I did not join the army. So there was that. And I went through medical school, which was, I don't remember how many months it was, but it was very interesting. It was a very interesting experience. So yeah, it was also kind of weird because it was the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. We all got together. The story goes is that the government realized, this is a cocky Navy story, by the way, so just be aware it has some slight bias. Story, at least for the Navy side, goes that the Navy corpsmen are the best in the medical field, like military medical, and the government found out about that, and so we were brought down to San Antonio, Texas, to boost up the other branches to make their medical teams better. And the Air Force got together and worked with us. Apparently, according to at least the Navy side of the story, the Army was like, no, we have a certain way of doing it and we're not going to change it. So you had three branches all simultaneously living together on one base. It was chaos and it was hilarious. I can imagine that was really hard, Christopher, especially like writing letters, especially because, as technology gets better and better, it's kind of a dying form of communication. Yeah, I can imagine that it was really, really hard because it was like you're writing someone that's never going to be able to call you back. And I'm glad that it's over with because I can only imagine how hard that was. For me personally, sitting in boot camp, it was rough. It was, so heartbreaking when, they didn't answer. And I knew that I couldn't call them back. I knew that they would see the missed call, knowing that it was me, and they couldn't hear my voice because they had missed it. Yeah, me too, to be honest. I appreciate the ability to text my partner whenever I want to. Yeah, it was a pain. And like when I got my phone back, I freaked out. I scrolled through Facebook because I didn't know what I'd missed. I, texted everyone to see how everyone was because I'd missed so much. It was crazy. And I would like consistently forget my phone too. I'm really bad at forgetting my phone, but if I like am without it for a long period of time, I just won't remember it. So I do retrain myself to always remind myself to bring my phone. It was hilarious because I'd get all the way down, and I'd go to leave and I'd be like, crap, I don't have my phone. So I'd have to go all the way back up to my room, grab my phone, bring it all the way back down. It was hilarious. Yes, it was so hard. It was like, it's like a piece of you is gone, a piece of you that connects you to your family, that connects you to the world around you, that connects you to your friends. It was really hard. Granted, uh, we're also really into listening to music. So listening to music was a big thing as well for us. So we didn't have that. So our coping mechanism for not having music was annoying everyone else around us by singing songs that were in our head. I'm pretty sure that people hated me for it, but it was great fun. Because then I could just sing songs, and it was like I had my own music without, having my phone or swiping it in or doing anything like that. It was great fun. Um, so yeah, I would annoy people by singing whatever song popped into my head. Uh, One of my division commanders caught me singing once and gave me this really weird look. Like I was just singing and snapping, living my life, and she just looked at me really funny. I still remember the look on her face. She just looked at me like, "What are you doing?" Interesting. I mean, it's entirely a possibility. Um, I mean, it could entirely be true. I don't know. It's quite possible. There are people with the ID who are veterans who do, have one alter that joins the military and then the others realize, crap, what'd you do? I can't do that. Um, it's a typical teen thing. Yes, yes, it is. Oh my goodness. Callie asks, were you able to find others in the military with you with DID or similar to help you? And also, hello, Eric. It's nice to see you. Um, no, not that I know of. I haven't really connected with very many people. I know there are people around my area that have TID, but there's not really a way for people who were in the military and have DID to sort of meet up or find a common ground. When I was at the DID conference, there was someone there who was in the military and has DID, but I didn't really meet them. So there are people out there. I do know that, but I haven't really encountered anyone. But that's just me personally. Young adult, excuse me. Listen, my life motto is this: if you don't have music, you can always create it, whether it annoys the people next to you or not. Um, Whoever was out during boot camp, though, was always known for being very cheery. Uh, we don't exactly know who, but they were known for being very cheery and being very, bright and smiling. And because we do remember hearing, things like that, that we were always positive, that we were always, doing the best that we could, that we were always, bringing joy to others. So, no idea who I was, but thanks. Um, so yeah, it was fun. I don't know who it was, but they made the best out of sort of a crappy situation. Um, and we'll forever be grateful for that. Oh, thanks. We try. Uh, and like we would also be listening to other music that was around us. So that also kind of helped. Whether it was like your stereotypical like marching music or whether it was like your stereotypical Navy music, there was still music around. So it wasn't completely silent. And you would be singing various different songs, various different, we call them cadences per se. So when you're like walking, you'll have to walk in step and then you can all sing something. Um, you'd all say like a specific chant. Like, there were certain things like you would chant like Navy and like a few other things. I don't exactly remember all of them. Um, and it all depended upon the group too. Some groups wouldn't like say anything, some groups would. I think it all depended on the person that was leading the specific group. And we would learn how to do all of these different like cool moves, and there were also different jobs too as well. There's a job for the person who held the flag that specifically like listed our division number, which was like our group number. There was someone who held the flag that we made ourselves, which someone still has that flag. One person from the group was selected to have that flag. I don't exactly remember who, but someone did end up getting it, so they were able to keep it. We have a sweatshirt with whatever was on the flag. We have a shirt with whatever was on the flag. It's on like the back of the shirt. And that was exclusive to our group. It was something that we knew, something that was significant to us, and we were able to put it on a t-shirt, put it on put it on a sweatshirt, order pants that specifically said our number, so we could have, I guess, merchandise, whatever you want to call it, for the specific group that we were in. You would always have the same group of people, and they would separate you male and female. So all the females would stay together, and all of the males would stay together. And sometimes you would do things specifically with all of the females, or sometimes you would do things specifically with your specific group of people. How did you quit the military, and do they take good care of you now that you're a veteran? Thank you for the question, Power to the Plurals. So I quit the military because when I was in the military, I was diagnosed with PTSD, which came as not a complete shock, because I was looking over my shoulder. I was, basically exhibiting your standard stereotypical PTSD symptoms. I wasn't lashing out at people, but I was exceedingly paranoid. I was worried that people were following me. And so when I was brought back to the States, it just got worse. I couldn't do my job because I couldn't remember things. My memory was getting worse. This idea that I was exceedingly overwhelmed was getting worse. I was seeing a therapist at the time, and it had gotten to a point where I just didn't want to be in anymore. I felt so stifled. I felt so boxed in and so, closed in, and I felt like I didn't have enough time in the day. And then once I discovered that, I had DID, that just made it worse, because I would go to work from like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning till like 4 o'clock in the evening. And then Sarah, one of my alters, would come out and play Zelda for 6 or 7 hours. And then we'd be trying to, have some time to relax. And it was very hard. I don't know, when I specifically brought up the symptoms of DID and the symptoms of dissociation, she didn't take me seriously. But on the other hand, she did say that I was no longer qualified to be in the military, which was a huge relief, because I had been saying that for a while. And I'd been holding on for as long as I could, but I knew I couldn't do it anymore. So I am medically retired in military terms, which basically means I'm retired. In the military system, whether you're medically retired or whether you've served your 20 years and you're retired, it doesn't matter. They'll group you into one and say you're retired. And so how the system works is they evaluate you. So for example, the one condition that I have listed is PTSD. So they rate your PTSD on a scale from 0% to 100%. It goes by tens. So you could be rated at 10%, you could be rated at 100%. I'm rated at like 70%. And basically there's a whole list of breakdown as to why you're listed at 70%, or why you're listed at 40%. But by applying for this and getting these conditions that, happened while you were in the military is a great thing. And I suggest any veteran, whether DID or non-DID, to push for that. If there is evidence that, like, for example, I was diagnosed with PTSD in the military. There was a clear downfall after that. I couldn't do my full duty. I couldn't, do certain jobs. I couldn't do a lot of this stuff, and that clearly shows. So how they came to the decision of 70% was through all of that evidence. Now, that gives me free health, like free care for PTSD. So every therapy appointment that I go to, every, psychiatric appointment that I go to is free. It's free of charge to me because the military, can prove that I was diagnosed while in the military. And they can prove that these symptoms got worse while in the military. And so I get a certain amount of money per month. So it's kind of like disability, kind of like Social Security. It's less of an asinine process. Don't get me wrong, it's still asinine, but it's basically the equivalent. And yes, they do, for the most part. The VA healthcare system is crappy, depending upon where you go. But financially and, in regards to mental health, they do a pretty good job. Yes, it's exclusive merch. I don't exactly know where it is, but it's really comfy and I love it. And it's a good, I guess, memory from boot camp. Callie says, do you feel your military experience has helped you with your system? Undoubtedly. I don't know if I would have figured out that I had a system if I hadn't joined the military. I don't know where I would be in this process. I don't know what I would be doing, whether I would be graduating college, whether I would be, already dropped out of college. I don't know. But I think that it has. It's opened my eyes because I went from Illinois to Texas to Japan, back to Illinois and to Ohio. And it's shown me what traveling is like, what moving is like, not having a permanent home is like, what it's like. I've experienced a difference of culture. I've experienced a difference of time zones. And, what exactly that means, When I was in Japan, I would step on the base and I was an American in an American base. And the moment I stepped off the base, I was in Japan. Listening to people speak Japanese, riding their train system, eating Japanese food, going to a Japanese grocery store, hanging out with a Japanese family. It was such a wonderful experience. And while all of the negative stuff is still there, the positive stuff I wouldn't change, period. So, Kayla, I was not deployed anywhere. Specifically for the medical side, the likelihood of you being deployed to a ship or being deployed to the Middle East is kind of low, specifically in the hospital setting. The most likely place that you would be deployed is a hospital ship, because when you're talking about, let's say, hypothetically, an aircraft carrier, that's the largest ship that the Navy has. There's only a certain amount of medical people that they can take. They can take 50 aviation people. They can take, 100 deck seamen. They can take whoever of whatever job that they had. But for the medical field, there's only a little medical section, and it's filled with, a doctor, with a nurse, with whatever they fill it with. And so, it can be very hard to get on a ship, per se. So if you want to live your whole entire Navy career without getting on a ship, you could kind of do that in the specific field that I was in. So my flashbacks are nothing, I guess, out of the ordinary per se. My flashbacks are in regards to things that civilians can experience. It's a little different setting, because it's on a base, it's on a military setting, but it's basically the same. Christopher says you'd be doing something else and yet dealing with the same thing. Yes, whatever that something else is, I have no idea. Callie asks, did it help with system function internally? Kind of. I would say so. I think it helped, foster communication, because now we're on a real world scenario. It's not just, I'm living in high school and the only person that's going to, possibly I'm going to get in trouble with are my parents. Vigilant in regards to what we could do, what we couldn't do. So I guess in a way it did help, just because, letting a little out to do a, very, like high stress job wasn't going to work at all. So good question. I really appreciate it. I think also it's helped us now that we've built some of this communication, when, Alter started to come forward. It was less of a shock. And now looking back on it, obviously, you can obviously tell that it was there. But when you're in that moment, you have no idea. Like we had long hair at one point in time, which may seem like a shock, but we didn't. So we had long hair. Then we got it cut down to about our jawline, and then we got it cut short. And then it was kind of long, like we have it now. And then we got it cut shorter, and then we kept it short. And now we've been experimenting as we're out of the military. We can do that. We dyed our hair blue. Our hair is currently black. So it's been very interesting. Like very, very interesting. Also, it's very interesting going to the VA specifically, because I'm only 22. So specifically, I am a fish out of water, because most of the people that they deal with are in their 30s or their 40s, or, most people that I've seen, at least in the VA where I go, aren't medically retired at a younger age. Or if they are, they're retired at an older age. So it's very, very interesting and very, very different too. Because I'm basically around a bunch of older people that aren't my age. So it's very interesting to note, very interesting to see. So yeah. There's that. Which I think is, I guess it was a huge culture shock, going to the VA. I would see people stare at me too, because they would think that, I didn't belong at the VA, because I am so young, because I am so, I am not your stereotypical age for retirement. I'm only 22. Yes, actually there are. And a lot of what they do specifically inside, actually comes from our experience with the Navy. And it's more specifically in regards to like various different areas. But yeah, it's very interesting to note. And it has, I guess, helped with structure as well for the better, because you can see how the military is structured. You can see, how everything is, and you can sort of learn to, I guess, replicate it. Obviously not with the same like strictness on like hair and clothes and everything like that, because that just seems ridiculous. But it at least gives you some sort of groundwork to improve your system. So good question, Eric. Yeah, so that is it's a very interesting thing to note how it how it impacted our system as we now know it. And I think that on one hand it made it, worse on some aspects, but it also improved it on some aspects. The military for an unexperienced person can be a very shocking environment. And, we had full plans of, staying in for as long as we could and, going through this and becoming better. And we wanted our, we wanted our little rank on our collar. We wanted all of that. Unfortunately, that just wasn't viable. That wasn't feasible. Also, if you hear noise in the background, our partner's making pizza dough. So if it gets too loud, let me know. But I just wanted to let you know about that. So yeah, it was very, very interesting. I think also not the lack, but the introduction of a new culture was also a good experience as well. It's a good experience for us all. Okay, good. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. We've killed the yeast like 4 times already. So what else? Also, I would like to point out that making appointments in the veteran system is exceedingly difficult. It's such a pain. It's okay. See you soon, power to the plurals. It's such a, I guess, I don't know, it's just difficult to deal with, especially because, for example, my therapist, I should be seeing my therapist every single week. But due to the volume of people that require, mental health appointments, it's just not possible. Yes, appointments are very difficult, especially trying to get an appointment for therapy is a pain. I just had to schedule my appointment. Wish I had my therapy appointment like the other day. It's at the end of the month, and now my next therapy appointment is at the end of next month. So I have like 4 weeks in between. And it's, unfortunately, there's nothing that she can do about it. My therapist can't do anything about it because that's just how the system is. I'm not angry with her. I don't blame her because I understand that. But it is exceedingly difficult because it's like I need this specific, therapy. Ideally, I would need it once a week. But in the reality, it just can't happen. Yeah, it's really frustrating. The ideal is like every 2 weeks. That's ideally what we would like to do, but sometimes it doesn't work like that. Either because an appointment is canceled, and we try and schedule like 2 appointments. So we'll schedule then 1 appointment, and then when I go in, I'll schedule the next appointment for the next, not for, so I'm doing a poor job at explaining this. So I have an appointment. Like I just had my appointment. I scheduled 2 appointments when I go to my next appointment, I'll schedule one after that. So I'm always one appointment ahead. Yeah, it's not the best, to be honest. And it sucks because I know I'm not the only one. But as she's the person who has the most experience in dealing with DID, she's the therapist that I'm with. And it sucks because there's always so much to catch up on too. As far as, doctor's appointments are kind of a pain. I have a lot of issues with one specific clinic in the VA. They'll never answer when I call their main line. If I miss a phone call from my doctor, I'm kind of screwed. And it's just little things like that. And they're little things that could potentially be changed, but they just aren't. And it's kind of exceedingly frustrating, because they always state that, you're a veteran, you've served, and it's our chance to give back. But if you're not giving back in a positive way that's helpful to veterans, because, well, yes, I would consider myself quite tech savvy. There's a lot of people that aren't, and that system can be exceedingly hard to navigate. Yeah, I know. And at least they're an hour long, so that helps. But yeah, it's not the most ideal situation ever. Welcome back, power to the plurals. But it's just an unfortunate thing that I have to deal with. The best thing, the biggest weight off my shoulders is I don't have to pay for it. Because I'm medically retired, I am entitled to VA healthcare, which means I don't have a copay. Now, under my health insurance, if I were to go somewhere else, yes, I would. But if I go through the VA, I don't have to. Well, so I guess that is one thing. But also at the same time, free healthcare and terrible service. So I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up that we always have issues with. Specifically in regards to getting on hormones is our biggest struggle right now. As we identify as trans, and we are trans, that's a huge thing. And I find this ridiculous. So the military doesn't service trans people. So you can't get hormones, you can't get surgeries, you can't get anything else. But when you get out of the military, there's a whole system. There's a clinic for you. There's, a doctor that can prescribe hormone therapy to you. There's a social worker. There's a psychiatrist. There's a therapist. They all sort of work together. And I think that it's exceedingly interesting. Yeah. Which sucks. Because, it should be something that, everyone should have access to. I'm exceedingly grateful to have the healthcare that I do have, even if it's not the best. I at least have healthcare. I at least am provided it by the Veterans Administration, which is nice. So I can at least go to appointments. I can at least get the care. So there is that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that like, oh, I have healthcare, but it sucks, and like, oh, I'm not grateful for it, because of course I am. But it can get very bogged down, especially when you're dealing with governmental healthcare. It can be a very, very slow process. The one thing that I will appreciate, though, through the VA, you can get travel reimbursement. So, like, for example, every single time I go to the VA, I can fill out a form, and they'll send me a check with however much they calculate I spent on gas. So I can get reimbursed that way. There's always something that they can do. You can get in-home care assistance. So if you're deemed housebound, like you don't leave your house. It's more specifically in regards to physical reasons. So like you're an amputee, you have extreme physical pain, you have physical problems. I don't know if they could make a case for mental health problems. A guy that I spoke to suggested it, but I don't exactly know. They also have unemployment that you can apply for as well. And so basically, if you qualify for unemployment, they bump your 70% or whatever it is you're rated up to 100%. But that is, a catch-all. You can't work. You can't make under a certain amount. You can't, basically, you just can't work. And you can look up the specific stipulations because, like, if you're looking to do certain things, there's people that have had questions about, like, streaming on Twitch if you make money, or, selling things on Etsy, or selling things, and you make money, how much can you make, and what would disqualify you from employment? Yes, I'm very, very lucky, Christopher, to have it. Very, very lucky. And I consider myself exceedingly lucky. The VA, even though their healthcare is a little asinine, they've helped me so much. There was a time where I was struggling. I was going to food pantries. I was, worried about how I was going to be able to put gas in the car, how I was going to be able to, make it to an appointment. I would have to cancel appointments because I just couldn't afford to go. And thankfully, I had a wonderful social worker who helped me, apply for programs to help me look for certain things, and go to these various different resources because I had no idea. And it was exceedingly frustrating, but it was my life for a while. It was our life for a while. And so I'll forever be eternally grateful for his ideas, for his process. It took quite longer than expected because I was unaware that you can't apply for unemployment through the VA if you already have an open appeal going. So, for example, when I got my official decision that said yes, you're disabled with 70%. I was like, well, that's not fair. So I argued it and sent in a letter and made my case, and made an appeal. Well, it took over a year for them to tell me that they respect whoever made the decision and that they're not going to change it. And within that year, I could not apply for unemployment. I could not, receive any other benefits until that had gone through, which was frustrating because I wasn't making enough money to survive. I was going to food pantries. I could barely go to the grocery store. I could barely pay bills. And it was the most frustrating thing ever. Kayla asked, so you might have already answered this, is SSDI something you're allowed? I think so, but I don't know. I've never explored it. I've never looked into it. I think so because it is a disability. I would be qualified for it, but I would be arguing for a mental health disability, which is difficult to do. So it's a toss-up of whether it's worth it or not. Whether it's worth it or if I even can do it. I think I can, but I don't exactly know. Because I don't know if it's solely income-based or if it's, I'm not that familiar with the SSDI program, so I don't exactly know. And because I'm receiving something that's similar to SSDI, they may not accept me because I'm already receiving disability pay from the Veterans Administration, if that makes sense. So, but yeah, it was exceedingly frustrating because I went to apply for unemployment, and I got a call saying, well, you're appealing your disability rating, so you can't apply for unemployment. And I was like, well, okay, thank you. And I was exceedingly defeated. And one of the biggest worries in regards to me applying for unemployment was my age, as I'm only 22. They could have come back with a decision that said, no, you're not you're not worthy of receiving unemployment. You're 22. Sure, your mental health sucks, but go out and get a job. And that was a huge worry. That wasn't just my worry either. That was also my social worker's worry as well when I applied. And, we sent in everything, sent in, the form. My partner wrote a lovely letter basically detailing why I can't work. And I forget what else was sent in, but this whole package came in. And I could watch the process too. So, being a veteran, and whether you're applying for disability, whether you're applying for unemployment, whatever it is you're applying for, there's a website called eBenefits where I can log in and track it all. So I could see every single process. I could see that they'd received it. I could see that the case was open. I could see that they were reviewing the evidence, that they were, contemplating a decision. I could see that the decision was appearing to be positive, and I freaked out. I was like, holy cow, man. I thought that they were for sure going to just deny me. I didn't get my hopes up because they'd already denied me once because I was, in the process of doing an appeal. And the appeal came back as, no, we stick with our decision. So I was so worried. And I didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I was, concerned. I was shocked. Like, what happens if this is a lie? What happens if they've entered it in the system wrong? There was all of these variables. And I finally got a letter that said, yes, I had received unemployment. And it was a huge relief. I cried and I cried and I cried because it was finally like the Veterans Administration was listening to me, was hearing what I had to say, that I can't work. I tried working and it didn't work out. And I ended up quitting. The Elephant Journal system says, what's your favorite aspect of being plural? And what are your plans for the future? My favorite aspect of being plural is my family. I personally, I go on this field, I feel so honored that they are a part of my life and that they trust me to be a part of their life. The foundation of our system is trust. If we don't trust each other, that communication isn't there. When Sarah first came out and first fronted, because she was the first one out, we didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And I was shocked. But I also, the more I watched her, the more I listened to her, the more I watched her play Zelda, and I heard what she had to say. And I saw she was just a goofy kid who wanted to live her life. And that was so today. And she's come out of her shell more, which is nice. And it is exceedingly helpful too. As far as what are my plans for the future, I'm not exactly sure. I know that, as it stands right now, I can't work. And I've accepted that. But I've also, been looking to, well, what can I do with my time? And I don't exactly know as of yet. Because while I don't have a job, I have a dog. We do have a chinchilla. But he's a little mouse looking thing. He's got the big ears. He's big and fluffy. He's got a big tail. So obviously I have, creatures that I need to look after. But I'm not exactly sure what I'll do. I look towards the DID community in regards to what I can do to help, because I feel that I'm very fortunate to have the communication that I have, to be able to work together as a system, and to function together as a system. And that's a really, really neat thing for us. And it's helped us be diverse. It's helped us, stick together. And we're not always perfect at it. We're not the best at it. But we are learning how to work together. I think that that's a big plan for the future, is how do we work together? How do we function together? But also, how do we thrive together? And that's just a personal journey for us. Kayla says that you're on SSI. Oh, yeah, I've heard that it's a really long process. I've heard that it can be very frustrating. But yeah, I'll definitely look into it. Thank you for the suggestion. I really appreciate it. So yeah. What else? I was gonna say something else, but I don't remember. Joys of having DID. Another big thing for our system specifically is we kind of control who runs at the VA. More specifically, myself, Ashton, will usually front during medical appointments. If for some reason I'm busy, or if for some reason I can't be out, we have a couple of other people in our system that we trust with that job. In regards to therapy is kind of a throw our hands in the air, and whoever wants to front can front. It all depends upon the comfortability, how comfortable we are with various people. With our psychiatrist, it's most exclusively me. Our psychiatrist laughably told us when we were diagnosed, good news, they're not permanent. And I looked at her and said, what do you mean they're not permanent? I think you'd like to reevaluate that statement. So we went on our whole spiel about how we're not doing integration and stuff like that. And she didn't really understand it. But she also goes off of the idea that integration is the one way to go about it. Good news, you can work towards integration. Which I thought was very interesting. I was like, thanks for the advice, but no thanks. And my doctor struggles with the concept of DID. Like hardcore struggles with it. She openly talks about how she doesn't know what it is. She openly talks about how she's, confused. She's trying to grasp the situation. And we've been doing this dance for about a year now, and she finally decided to do research. So we'll see where that comes up. We'll see exactly what comes with that. She's always asking me, if I'm here, if I'm present, and it's decently frustrating. Because, we're sympathetic to the idea that you don't have the knowledge, but we're also like, well, then why aren't you getting this knowledge? If you don't have this knowledge, why aren't you actively seeking it out? Our view is, I'm not here to educate you. I'm here to give you a window on what it's like as a system, like how our system works, how our system functions. But that doesn't mean I'm the catch-all for what it's like to have DID. Truth be told, I'm not. Everyone experiences DID differently. So I think that, the idea that I'm the regal veteran with, no. There's plenty of other veterans with DID. There's plenty of other people who have different systems than I do, have different systems that are run differently. I just, I can only do so much. I can share with you my experience, but that's it. It's just my experience. It's just how I live my life. That's specific towards me. And that's all. Oh, it's exceedingly frustrating especially when I'm trying to explain to this doctor that I'm trans and I also have DID. That confuses her so much because, she's under this idea that I might change my mind. I'll come to the conclusion that I'm trans, and then miraculously one day I'll all of a sudden have an identity switch, and the identity is like, hey, what's going on here? What have you done? Which isn't the case. As we bring it up to her, we've had this decision talked about over and over and over again. It's a consensus that we have made ourselves. And that is beyond frustrating, that no matter how many times I explain that to her, she doesn't seem to get it. So, for example, hormone therapy is a huge battle because when you're on hormones, a lot of the changes are permanent. So, for example, your voice gets deeper, hair patterns change. There's other physical things that you can't go back on after a certain amount of time of being on hormones. And I'm well aware of that risk, and I get that. So it's very frustrating that she does not get that. My therapist went through and, did determined if I could give informed consent. So I could speak for myself, and I'm at a sound mental state to be able to speak for myself, which is understandable. Speaking to other trans people, that is a standard process that they have to go through. And it happens with everyone. But, she took that answer of informed consent that I was able to do so, and basically said, well, I don't feel comfortable, and I have to feel comfortable. But I can give informed consent, so I don't really see the issue. And it's exceedingly frustrating dealing with all that, because it's like, it's right there. She's the lady that can give it to me. But she chooses not to because she doesn't understand, because there's a lack of understanding. And that's probably the most difficult part of it all, is it's this lack of understanding. And I also choose who I tell. So if I go and see a specialist, I don't blurt out the fact that I have DID, because that would, be ridiculous. Personally, in my own personal opinion, I just wouldn't trust anyone with that information. I trust my therapist, and I trust, certain people in my life. And, I'm obviously live streaming right now. And it's, it's my personal choice, to be honest. Caleb Barnes says, I've heard someone say, when you've met someone with DID, you've met one person with DID. Yes, that is most definitely true. How my system is set up, how my inner world is set up, is mine and mine alone. You could have similar features, you could have similar people, you could have similar jobs, but it's not a copycat. And for my doctor to, expect that this is the end all be all for DID, no, it's not. Look up channels, look up people, look at their experience, look at, studies of people who are trans and have DID. Look into all of this information, because it's out there. Look at people's experiences who have DID and who are trans and who are actively receiving hormones. It's just all about educating yourself, because I don't speak for the whole DID community, nor would I ever want to. I speak my personal experience for myself. And that's all that I can do. I can't do anything else. But that's it. And I've spoken to my therapist about how we, with the idea, in my personal opinion, are the most knowledgeable about our condition, because we live with it every single day. It's our truth. You know, my little window of DID is my own. And that's all. Oh, sorry. But anyways, so there's my little spiel. Anyways, I wanted to say thank you guys so much for coming. I wanted to say thank you guys for all your wonderful questions. My channel is somewhere listed. I know it's under 2 different names. We're under the process of switching it over. But, you know, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. It's been wonderful. You guys have all been wonderful. So I'm going to try to end this now. But yeah, thank you guys for joining. And I really hope that you guys have a wonderful conference, continuing whatever you're watching, and you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.